let me ask you something. How does a tiny, remote volcanic island, just a little speck in the middle of the Indian Ocean, with no native population whatsoever, become one of Africa's most stable democracies and one of its wealthiest nations? It really is a paradox. A nation built, quite literally, from scratch, populated by waves of people who arrived on its shores, none of whom could originally call it home. So in this explainer, we're going to unravel the incredible story of how this improbable nation was forged. We'll go from the harsh realities of colonialism to the triumphs of a modern, multicultural society. This is the story of Mauritius. Before the first ships ever saw its coastline, Mauritius was just silence. An untouched canvas of lush emerald forests, home to creatures you couldn't find anywhere else on the planet. But history, as it always does, had other plans. This island was destined to become a testament to human movement and resilience, its story painted by waves of colonizers, slaves, and laborers, with each group leaving its own permanent mark. The island's history is this whirlwind of changing flags. First up were the Dutch in 1598. They named it after their prince, Maurice van Nassau, but, their attempts to settle it just kind of fizzled out. Then, in 1715, the French arrived, renaming it Isle de France. They engineered a very profitable and incredibly brutal plantation economy. But then, the Napoleonic Wars changed everything. In 1810, the British seized control, changed the name back to Mauritius, and they would rule for over 150 years, right up until the nation finally got its independence in 1968. Each empire just left another layer, forging a new identity from what was left of the old one. The French colonial dream? Well, it was built on an absolute nightmare. The Code Noir, or the Black Code, was the legal framework for slavery. It was a system of pure, institutionalized dehumanization that turned people, brought from Africa and Madagascar, into property, into goods. This brutal machine powered the island's sugar economy and carved out its first demographics, a deep scar of history that the nation still carries today. What happened next caused a massive shift. When Britain abolished slavery in 1834, those huge sugar plantations needed a new source of labor. Their solution? Indentured servitude. Between 1834 and 1921, nearly 500,000 laborers were transported from India. Let that number sink in. This wasn't just a migration. It was a demographic tidal wave that would completely and permanently reshape the island's cultural, religious, and political future. When independence finally came, Mauritius was facing a pretty scary reality. Like so many former colonies, its entire fate was tied to a single crop. The island was a classic monoculture, totally dependent on the whims of the global sugar price. So the question was, how did it escape that trap? How did it ignite what the world would soon start calling the Mauritian miracle? For years and years, sugar was absolutely everything. The price of sugar on the world market can make or break the national budget. It meant the difference between prosperity and poverty. That is a dangerous way for a new nation to live. The island's leaders knew it, too. Diversifying the economy wasn't just a good idea, it was a fight for survival. And wow, this chart right here just shows you how well they succeeded. Just look at that balance. Where one single crop used to dominate everything, now you see this vibrant mix. You've got tourism, that big slice there, and a booming financial services sector. Those are the new pillars of the economy. But you also see textiles and technology playing a huge part. Mauritius basically put on a masterclass in economic transformation, using its political stability to become the modern, tough, resilient hub it is today. Sugar is still there, you see it, but it's definitely not the king anymore. Okay, so building a wealthy nation is one thing, but building a unified one? That's a whole different ballgame. You could argue the real Mauritian miracle isn't even economic, it's social. I mean, how do you forge a single shared identity from so many different peoples who are brought together by force and by business, from totally different continents, with different religions and different languages? This religious makeup is completely unique in Africa. As a direct result of all that indentured labor, Mauritius is the only African nation where Hindus are in the majority. But look closer. You see a huge Christian community with roots in both European and African history, and a really dynamic Muslim population too. This isn't just different groups living side by side. It's a deeply woven society where national holidays actually celebrate the festivals of every single major faith. So how does everybody talk to each other? The answer is this fascinating linguistic dance. On the streets, in people's homes, the one sound that unites everyone is Mauritian Creole. It's a French-based language that was born on the island, and almost everyone speaks it. But walk into a parliament session or a courtroom, and the official language is English. Then turn on the TV or pick up a newspaper, and you'll see that French still has a powerful cultural influence. It's this daily, effortless juggling of languages that perfectly mirrors their blended heritage. And to protect this really delicate balance, Mauritius actually hardwired multiculturalism right into its politics. The Constitution officially recognizes 4 main communities. This isn't just a nice, symbolic gesture. It's tied to a unique voting system that was designed for one main reason: to make sure that even the smallest minority voices are represented and heard in government. But this success story isn't a fairy tale. Paradise is fragile. Today, this island nation is facing a whole new wave of threats, from its own delicate ecosystem to the rough currents of global politics. And they all challenge the peace and prosperity that was so hard to win. Mauritius famously was the only home of the dodo, a bird whose name is now basically shorthand for extinction, a tragic global symbol of humanity's destructive power. But there's another story, a much more hopeful one. The Mauritius kestrel was once one of the rarest birds in the entire world, with only 4 left in the wild. But through this massive conservation effort, it was brought back from the very brink. These 2 birds, they tell the parallel stories of the island's environmental soul, a history of devastating loss and a future of fierce determination and hope. The pressures aren't just ecological either. Right before independence, the UK literally detached the Chagos archipelago from Mauritius, forcibly removed all of its people, and cleared the way for a major US military base. For more than half a century, Mauritius has been fighting to get it back. Now, recent international court rulings and diplomatic agreements are finally starting to turn the tide, but the long, painful shadow of this colonial-era wound, it's still there. As a small island nation, Mauritius is on the absolute front line of the climate crisis. And this isn't some distant threat they're talking about. It's happening right now. Rising sea levels are eating away at the pristine beaches that power their tourism industry. Cyclones are getting stronger, battering their coasts. And the warming oceans are bleaching the vibrant coral reefs that act as the island's natural shield. The very foundations of their modern miracle are at risk. So what does the future hold for this incredible, improbable nation? Well, to understand where it's going, maybe we should look to its past, to a motto that was adopted centuries ago but has never felt more important than it does today. Stella clavisque Marius Indici. It's Latin, of course, for star and key of the Indian Ocean. Now, for the old empires, this was a literal truth. The island was a strategic key to controlling the sea lanes between Europe and Asia. It was a vital prize in their game of global chess. But maybe today that motto means something deeper. Is the real value of Mauritius no longer its spot on a map, but its powerful example? In a world that seems to be getting more and more fractured by division, could this small island, this nation of arrivals, hold a key not to the ocean, but to coexistence? Now that is the question Mauritius asks all of us.